What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to make a video talking about my top 5 fights that need to happen in 2025. We're kind of wrapping up this year in 2024. We got 3 main pay-per-view cards left: UFC 308, 309, and 310, headlined by Belal Muhammad and Shavkat Rakhmonov at 310, John Jones and Stipe Miocic at 9, and Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway coming this weekend at UFC 308. So I kind of want to look forward to 2025 and talk about the biggest fights that I think that need to be made next year, considering that there is so many different individuals in the fight game who need to happen, fights that I want to see go down. What are the biggest fights that could possibly headline cards, and the best fights that could just allow fighters to be, excited and be interested in UFC moving forward, especially in 2025. But if you guys enjoyed the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That is the best way to help the channel grow. And while you're already down there, please go on and turn on the post notifications, just so you guys are always notified further about UFC content releasing each and every day. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video talking about my top 5 fights that need to be made within 2025. So I kind of just want to lay out these fights aren't going to be the biggest, fights that we know are going to happen, like Islam Makhachev versus Harman Sarukian. That's the fight that we know is going to happen. But I kind of want to talk about fights that could be going on later in the year and what the best fights inside the organization could be. Because I don't want to make this video just a generic video talking about, title challengers and champions that possibly could be happening. I want to actually go deeper and dive into a bunch of different fights that I think would be incredible to be made, and fights that might not be at the forefront of every single person's mind currently. So the first fight I kind of want to talk about with you guys is a fight that has been talked about a lot more, but isn't a fight that is guaranteed to occur. The next fight that I want to talk about is Pereira Vs Ankalaev, and I think that this is such a very intriguing fight inside that light heavyweight division. As we all know, I kind of broke the news earlier yesterday that Prochazka would be fighting Jamahal in a very incredible battle. I'll leave that here, but Ankalaev is actually fighting this weekend at UFC 308, and he has a very tough bout with Alexander Rakic right in front of him. And if he's able to get through Rakic, he's kind of stamped himself a title shot with Pereira. And yes, that's not guaranteed. Rakic is a very hard opponent, but this is a fight that Ankalaev has been wanting for a very long time, and I do think a fight with Alex Pereira is something that would be incredibly beneficial for both opponents. Everyone has been talking about, can Pereira stop the wrestler? Can he do this? Can he do that with a wrestler? And Ankalaev is the person to go in there and really put against Alex Pereira to solve all these questions. Ankalaev is easily the best wrestler inside the light heavyweight division. Now, he's not an elite wrestler in any regard, but considering that the light heavyweight division is kind of thin with not only talent but wrestling ability, Ankalaev is your best option to go in there and put against Alex Pereira. And I think that this is a fight that all the MMA community wants to see, but is also a fight that just genuinely is just worth salivating over, just to be able to understand and see Alex Pereira not only in the octagon, but against the one fighter that we think could be the biggest problem for him going inside the organization. I do think that Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira is going to happen sometime in the early portion of next year. I don't know what card it would be on, but I do think that Alex Pereira, he said he wanted to get back in March, and I do think that if Ankalaev gets a win here over Alexander Rakic this weekend, I think that fight would be stamped, sealed, and signed for something like UFC 313. The next fight I kind of want to talk to isn't actually a championship bout, but is a fight that I do think would be an incredible #1 contender match if this person loses coming up in their championship fight, and that would be Sean Strickland going against Israel Adesanya for a second time. This fight I just feel like needs to happen, considering that Sean Strickland went in there. It was a massive underdog at UFC 293 against Adesanya and got just dog walked him so crazy in a bout that I had no chance and had no thought that he would be able to win that fight. But he went in there and showed that there is levels to a striking game, going up and facing one of the best kickboxers inside the organization. Sean Strickland went in there and did something unbelievable and unthinkable compared to anyone other inside the UFC organization. Israel Adesanya, as we all know, is looking to come back sometime very, very soon. I kind of broke the news that he looks like he's going to be fighting Kyle Brahalo coming up here very, very soon, and I'll leave that video right here. But this fight between Strickland and Adesanya would be a very incredible fight if Strickland loses to Dricus du Plessis, and if Israel Adesanya goes in there and beats Kyle Brahalo. I think that this would be the #1 contender fight, or at least a #1 contender fight for Israel Adesanya. A rematch prior to both of these fighters kind of leaving the organization for retirement. But genuinely, this fight needs to happen again. I don't think we would ever see it in a championship setting, but this is one of the biggest fights you could make inside the organization, considering that Sean Strickland beat Adesanya in his own turf in Sydney, Australia, and genuinely doesn't like that guy. And Adesanya wants his revenge to prove that that was just a one-off fluke. And I do think that Adesanya versus Strickland is 100% a fight that needs to go down in 2025. The next fight I kind of want to talk about isn't a fight that is guaranteed to happen in 2024, but is a fight that I genuinely think could happen. Ilia Topuria is fighting this weekend, and if I do think he gets through Max Holloway, and another fighter who was fighting, and I kind of linked that video earlier, Alexander Volkanovski is going to be fighting Diego Lopes, and if Diego Lopes gets through Ilia Topuria, only makes sense to put those two together. Ilia Topuria, Diego Lopes, in an incredible fight in the UFC lightweight division. The new contenders, Ilia being the new champion. He's currently 15-0 going up against Max Holloway. If he wins that fight, he'd be 16-0. Diego Lopes is on a 5-fight streak inside the UFC, and he would be undefeated inside the UFC if he took on Movsar Evloev, not on 5 days notice. I truly think he would have won that fight. Diego Lopes is one of the most fun fighters inside the organization and truly is someone that I cannot wait to see step in the octagon every single time he fights. He's just so entertaining, especially that Brian Ortega and Sadiq Youssef win. Both those fights were incredible to watch. Diego Lopes is a man that everyone loves to see, especially since he represents Brazil and Mexico equally. Ilia Topuria, as we all know, one of the most confident fighters inside the UFC, a proud Spaniard at heart and for Georgia as well. Truly, Ilia Topuria is one of the best, most well-rounded champions, but I do think that this fight with Diego Lopes would pose a lot of different challenges for him. So like someone like Max Holloway, not in the same aspects though. Diego Lopes is one of the best submission artists the UFC has in it right now. Genuinely is an amazing grappler as well. But on the top of that, Diego Lopes is a very powerful striker as well, too, and I do think that that would be a very interesting fight to see between Ilia and Diego. It's a fight that I think has so many different layers to it. It's a fight that's got a lot of different aspects behind it, and it's a fight that we could see possibly Diego Lopes, in my opinion, go out there and take out Ilia Topuria. But there's a lot of questions with this fight, but it's something that I think needs to be booked for 2025. At number 2, we've all been talking about Islam Makhachev possibly going up to get the UFC welterweight title shot, and I do think that that's going to happen next year, and I do think a fight between Shavkat Rakhmonov, if he beats Bilal Muhammad, and Islam Makhachev after he beats Arman Tsarukyan would be a banger of a fight to be had. I know Islam Makhachev has beat Charles Oliveira, who's fighting for a number 1 contendership, versus Michael Chandler at UFC 309 at Madison Square Garden in that co-main event. A very good fight, but Islam has already fought Charles and is someone that I don't know would automatically be able to give that shot to, but I know that Islam Makhachev wants to be a double champion, and beating someone and going up into the welterweight division I think would be a very good fight. But especially if that fight is Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat has came out and says that, you know, he wouldn't want to fight Islam, but if that's who the UFC puts in front of him, he would be more than willing to take that fight. That fight is incredible to see Shavkat Rakhmonov go up against Islam Makhachev, considering that Rakhmonov and Makhachev are just so well-rounded. Shavkat has 18 wins, 0 losses inside the UFC, and every single one of his fights have been a finish, whether it is by submission or TKO or KO. His last 3 wins over Jeff Neal, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and Neil Magny have all been by submissions. And I know Islam Makhachev has some submissions too, but he is genuinely one of the most well-rounded fighters inside the organization. He's a truly special fighter inside there, but Islam Makhachev poses a lot different opportunities and a lot of different problems for a lot of these different fighters. Considering that he is such a massive welterweight, I do think that his style would translate over into the welterweight division, considering that he is just so technical, he's so fast for that division, and he's gonna be strong too. So I think that everything adds up for Islam Makhachev to go possibly challenge for the welterweight title. And I do think that a fight between Shavkat Rakhmonov and Islam Makhachev would be just absolutely perfect to be made inside the UFC welterweight division sometime next year if Rakhmonov wins the title and if Islam Makhachev is able to defeat Arman Tsarukyan. And lastly is a fight that needs to be made no matter what. It's the fight that we can't wait to see inside the organization. It's the fight that genuinely needs to be made of UFC all time. It is Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. I've made so many videos on this topic. There's not one that I could put here to really kind of talk about this, but Jon Jones is fighting Stipe Miocic at UFC 309. I don't know if this fight with Tom Aspinall is going to happen, but if it was a perfect world for me, I would make this fight as soon as possible, considering that Jon Jones, you know, is possibly going to retire. I want to have this fight done to unify the belt because genuinely Aspinall is one of, if not the greatest heavyweights on the planet and to ever compete inside the UFC. I know you got Stipe, I know you got DC, I know you got Jon Jones beating Cyril Gane, but Tom Aspinall is a different breed. He genuinely is. He's so good in every little thing that he does, and genuinely, I cannot wait to see him continue his legacy inside the organization. But I do think that Jon Jones would be a very hard fight for Aspinall, even though John is a little bit older. I do think that, yes, if John bulked up a little bit earlier and this was going on when John Jones was like 32, 33, 34, this would be an incredible hard fight for Tom Aspinall. But I still think that this fight needs to be made to kind of put your GOAT or your Michael Jordan of the UFC up against your new up-and-comer in Tom Aspinall, who is kind of proving yourself. And I understand that they kind of did that with Gane, but Gane wasn't of the same well-roundedness as Tom Aspinall. We kind of looking back at that fight, Gane was at a major disadvantage in any little bit of the wrestling department, and John Jones just kind of weathered the storm for like the minute that he was in there. Gane was nervous, and he just took him down, and I don't even know what he submitted him with, but he kind of just sat on Gane's head, and really he took that fight. But Tom Aspinall versus John Jones, the fight that Tom Aspinall wants, the fight that all the fans want, and is genuinely probably the most important fight in UFC history if it's able to go down, considering that you got the greatest of all time in John Jones fighting the next generation heavyweight in one of the most, if not the most dangerous man on planet Earth, the guy who has the shortest average fight time inside the UFC. His last 3 total fights have lasted a combined 3 minutes and 20 seconds total. A man who is absolutely crazy, and I cannot wait to see Tom Aspinall be able to return to the UFC heavyweight division and defend his title after John Jones possibly retires. But if he doesn't retire, John Jones, Tom Aspinall, the one fight to make in 2025 over any other fight out there. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights is MMA, and please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy the UFC content, and please let me know what you think about these 5 different fights that I mentioned going down that need to happen in 2025. My 5th fight that I think and the least important is Alex Pereira versus Rakhmonov Ankalaev, and then I moved into Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland, Diego Lopes versus Ilia Topuria, and then Islam Makhachev versus Shavkat Rakhmonov, and lastly, John Jones versus Tom Aspinall, the cherry on top, being held in 2025 if Aspinall or if Jones doesn't retire. I think all of these fights would be incredible fights to be made inside 2025, fights that would be able to show the next generation versus the current generation of fighters. Just some absolute bangers in there, and genuinely some fights that can't wait to be happening, considering that there's so much competition in the UFC right now, and it's so much talking back and forth. Let's finally be able to get these guys in with one another and genuinely put on a show. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights is MMA, and please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy the UFC content. And while you're down there next to the comment section, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys are always notified about when UFC content releases every single day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.